Semi-Eloquent.
I want you to just listen. Just for the next 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Take a few deep breaths. If you got this on the headphones, close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths and just listen. That's nice, right? I hope that came through. That is a recording of a summer morning on White Lake in northeastern Ontario, Canada. I was there last weekend at a cottage with some high school buddies. And as soon as I got to this place, I said, one of the things I want to do is I want to get up relatively early in the morning. I want to have a cup of coffee, and I just want to sit out on the deck that overlooks White Lake, and I want to just listen to the birds. And I did that. It was more difficult than you would think it should be, because White Lake is a solid 7 hours from where I live. And if you've got chronic back pain and you suffer from back spasms and you neglect to take your lumbar support cushion on the road with you, you're setting yourself up for the sort of trouble that I had, which was back spasms kicking in almost immediately upon arrival at said cottage. And fortunately, we weren't planning to do any gymnastics or bare knuckle boxing, or even any kayaking on the lake. So I was not hindered from doing any of the active things we wanted to do. I was, however, hindered from sitting upright a lot of the time and being at all comfortable. But I still managed on the Saturday morning to crawl out of bed very gingerly and make myself a cup of coffee and step out onto the deck overlooking White Lake. And I did not sit in one of the Adirondack chairs, which looked extremely comfortable and it would have been lovely. Instead, I lowered myself onto one knee, leaned my face against the railing, and looked out upon the lake and just listened to those birds. And oh, tranquility. Oh, tranquility. And I don't make enough of a point of that. It's difficult. I live in a city. You don't really get the sort of sound effect in the city that I was getting and I played for you just now. But I do in the morning get that. And I used to make a point of having my breakfast just with one of the front windows open, so I could hear the birds in my neighborhood. That's going to be your sparrows, it's going to be your robins, your chickadees, your cardinals. And there is a certain tranquility that comes in birdsong. And it's something that I didn't pay enough attention to through most of my life. But there is something so tranquil, something so peaceful in the sound of birds singing in the morning. And if you catch it right, as I did on White Lake, you catch it before all the boats come out. Human beings just create more damn noise pollution than anything else. And so you want to sit with your window open over breakfast in the city, and of course you get the sound of traffic, you get the garbage truck banging around in your neighborhood, you get your neighbor with the weed whacker and the leaf blower and the hedge trimmer and the lawn mower. Cities are a cacophony of noise. Just relentless, endless noise. And if you're lucky enough to be sitting in your yard and to catch a few minutes of relative silence, you get the wind whispering in the trees, you get the birds singing, perhaps the occasional cicada. You got to lap that up. You got to lap that up because it won't last longer than 30 seconds to a minute before your neighbor's weed whacker starts up again, or a chainsaw, or roofers somewhere in the distance, and that's all okay. That is the bargain you make. That is the deal you accept when you choose to live in the suburbs. And that's okay. But I think there is something very natural and organic and helpful and useful in just listening to the sounds of nature. When they talk about how to relieve stress, how to relieve anxiety, how to bring yourself down when you're amped up, one of the first things they always say, that amorphous they that they are always talking about, one of the things they say is get into nature. Go hiking in nature, go walk in nature, go be amongst nature. Most of us live in these kind of concrete jungles. Most of us live in this kind of civilization that is very separate from nature, very separate from our natural roots and origins. And something happens when you place yourself in nature and you settle back and you just listen or you just observe. Our vantage point at this cottage on White Lake, which was quite spectacular, looked out upon a little island in the lake. And there was a mama loon or a heron, one or the other. Maybe they're the same thing. I don't know. And she had a little baby. And so she had a nest on this island, and she would come out and she would swim around, and there would be the baby. And there was this family of geese. There were like 18 of them. I've never seen so many geese in one family. 3 adults, and then just a whole whack of goslings, which are in that teenager stage now. They're not the little yellow, white, fluffy puffballs anymore. They're actual geese now, just smaller than the adults. And every now and again, they would just appear on the lawn, all of them eating, and then someone would give some signal that I can't interpret, and they would all just file down into the lake, and off they would go. And I was watching the formation of the geese, watching how clans defend themselves in nature. And you see this with wolf packs. Usually, I think the head of the wolf pack actually trails behind the pack when they walk in formation, protecting the rear guard, and then a couple of strong young ones up front, and then the elders, and then the more vulnerable ones in the middle, and then the leader is at the back, protecting the whole troop, can see everything. So I was watching these geese because there were 3 adults, it seemed to me. I don't know how that works. A throuple, I guess. 3 adults, and then a whole batch of goslings. And sure enough, when they got in the water, it was 2 of the adults up front, then all the goslings, and then 1 of the adults at the back. I assume the leader. And I thought, well, that's very compelling. How little communities in the wild, little tribes, protect themselves. And geese don't really have predators. Once they reach a certain size, geese don't really have predators. Young ones, puffballs, do. Your foxes, your birds of prey, and we did see a bald eagle, which was pretty spectacular. And it was just really compelling, even with my back all ganked up, to just kneel and watch all of this happen and to listen to all of this happen. And I think a lot of us are missing out on tranquility, especially these days. I'm making a lot of mistakes these days. Maybe not a lot, but some pretty fundamental ones. One of the mistakes I'm making is that I'm still waking up every morning and going immediately for the phone. You know, what I should be doing in the morning is getting up, no phone, maybe a quick glance just to see if there's an emergency. I don't know. And then go down, make my coffee, make my breakfast, crack the window, listen to the birds, and don't look at anything. But I haven't been doing that. My dopamine slot machine, my phone addiction, probably much like yours, continues to dominate my day. And so I'm finding myself at breakfast scrolling through threads, seeing political news that makes me furious. And right off the hop, I am immersing myself in cortisol. I am immersing myself in anxiety. I am immersing myself in anger. I am immersing myself in fear, clickbait, rage bait, all of the stuff that makes the online world actually really toxic. And it's really a damn shame. And I'm getting tired. I grow weary of just endless clickbait. Endless clickbait. You drop onto YouTube and there will be some sort of political or social commentary, and the headline won't say what it is. It'll just be like, I can't believe he said this, or some other vague thing that they don't tell you what it is, so you've got to go look at it. And that's how I mostly separate what I watch from what I don't watch. So if I see a headline on a YouTube video that actually says what it is, and usually that's from an established news outlet, then I'll watch that. And then if I see them that are just seeming to be sensational or clickbait, Trump's next step, you won't believe it, something like that. I'm not great at clickbait headlines. But I see a bunch of those and I'm becoming annoyed by it. I'm becoming annoyed by people who seem to be taking what are very dire and serious circumstances and just rolling them into clickbait or rage bait and making off like bandits. And I guess good on you. That's the modern economy. But I get annoyed by endless clickbait. And yet, here I am, sitting down at the table at 7 a.m. or 7:15 when I should be setting the pattern for the day. When I should be setting my own tranquility. When I should be tapping into spirituality. When I should be going inside, or at least being tranquil, being calm, eschewing all of the sensationalism, the rage, the clickbait, all the stuff that's lurking around on social media, vying and often winning your attention. And so much better it would be to just crack the window, listen to birds, drink my coffee, tap into something higher, something more peaceful, something more spiritual. And yet I haven't been doing that. I've been running some bad habits lately, and that's what the dopamine addiction is. That's how they get you. That's what they want. Again, that amorphous they. They want your attention on their platforms, and so they feed you the stuff that you will react to because they know that anger makes people hang around longer than happiness does. That's why, famously, they used to say something to the effect of the average Howard Stern listener would listen for 2 hours, and the average Stern hater would listen for 4 hours for the same reason, to hear what he was going to say next. And don't we love a little rage? Don't we love a little online anxiety? And doesn't it just corrode us one brain cell at a time? It does. And yet I find myself falling into the trap. So I was determined at this cottage on the weekend, even with my wonky back, to indulge the lake and to indulge the bird song. And I managed to do that. And I captured a little bit of audio, and I hope it came through. And I hope that it offered some sort of tranquility to you. I was away with some high school buddies, and some of you younger people may not get the context for that. Because I am an early 90s high school graduate, and we were one of the last graduating classes to actually graduate and mostly lose touch with each other. For many, many, many happy years, high schools would have 25th anniversaries, 30th, 35th, 40th anniversaries, 40th reunions. There's a trope in how many movies, how many TV shows. It's the 25th high school reunion. And you go back and you try to see what became of the golden boys and the beautiful girls Who peaked and who flamed out and who turned into a millionaire? The 25th high school reunion. Well, we were one of the last classes to need that sort of thing because we lost touch with each other because social media didn't exist. People 5-10 years younger than us never really needed to separate from their high school people because they had each other on Facebook or they had each other on Instagram. They had each other on the socials. I remember distinctly when email became a thing. I was in my first year of university, quite literally handwriting letters to the few people that I remained in touch with, sending letters back and forth, getting mail, whatever. That's what you did in the early 90s. It was the last vestiges of an era, the letter writing era. And then at my university, people began to explain that electronic mail existed. And then you had to go through an enormous rigmarole to understand what your email address was and what to use to make some use of it. And then you wrote a handwritten letter to your friend at a different school to say, hey, do you know what electronic mail is? If you do, here's my address. And then eventually, oh, happy day, an email message would appear. And that's how it was back in those days. And we lost touch with each other. There's a handful of high school people that I'm still in contact with. Then Facebook came along. You reconnected with people up to a point, and you could sort of reintegrate. You could reconnect. Younger people than me didn't really ever have that problem. And so going away with your high school buddies to a cottage, not that big a deal because you probably didn't lose all that much contact with them anyways. For us, maybe a different thing. And so there's a small group of high school guys. We remain in contact via Facebook. We don't see each other often, although we're determined to rectify that. Here's a note for you kids, man. 30 years go by in a real fast hurry. Even if you remain in contact with your high school buddies, supposing you want to, and not everybody does, and I get it. 30 years goes by in a hurry, man. We're looking at each other like, where were those kids? Where were those kids from 35 years ago? And who are these middle-aged men sitting around a television? Very, very disorienting, but it goes by fast, kids, so I'm telling you to cherish every moment. Listen to those friggin' birds. And I'm feeling this week a slight bit of anxiety, and I'm feeling a certain guilt, perhaps even a small shame. They don't have any great lesson for you this week. Again, I talked in a recent episode about how some of us can feel as though if our output is not important, that it's not worth sharing. I still struggle at times with that with this podcast. Like it's a lot for me to ask you to listen if I'm not giving you some lesson. But is it enough to hear my voice? Is there a certain tranquility in my demeanor? Does it do something for you? I don't have a great lesson this week because I spent the weekend fighting back spasms yet again and perhaps confronting the reality of my age. I don't want to talk about that too much. I do want to give you a podcast, however, and so I give you the bird song. But in lieu of some great lesson or some great insight or even a good story, I do have a little bit of music I can share with you. I need to make this episode relatively short because, again, the back. I thought I could play pickleball today, but then it's like, no, dude, don't be stupid. I know you want to, but once you get injured, rushing it usually results in a worse and longer term injury. We don't want to do that. We need to mature. But if nothing else, let me give you a little bit of new music this week just to feast on while I'm recovering from these back spasms yet again. And there's a weird one. I've got a couple of suggestions this week, one of which is for the OGs, one of which is for some people in my life who may be listening to this podcast, who are part of the evangelical Christian world that I grew up in. And you can take the boy out of church, kids, but in some ways it's hard to take church out of the boy. And if you were around in the 80s with me, 80s, early 90s, and you were in the evangelical world, chances are pretty good that you were well-versed in the Christian rock and roll music. And what do I say about the Christian rock and roll music? When I was growing up, in my household, it was very strict. And so I wasn't allowed to own or purchase secular rock and roll music. I loved it and I listened to it all the time. My parents are both deceased now, so I could tell you, I can make a true confession that there were several Christian cassettes in my collection that had the name and album title and song listing of a Christian artist, but if you listened to the actual cassette, something else was dubbed onto it. And the Christian rock and roll music was authentically rock and roll enough that you couldn't really tell the difference a lot of the time. So I could play some of this music and pass it off as a Christian artist when it wasn't. It was the new Cinderella record, or it was something else that I had dubbed onto a cassette because I was a rebel like that. But I was ostensibly only allowed to own and purchase Christian music. And there was a point in time when I towed that party line pretty authentically. And so that's basically mostly what I listened to was just Christian rock music. And some of it was really bad, you know, and I listened to it in retrospect and I'm like, I have a certain tenderness for it, a fondness, a nostalgia. But at the same time, I'm like, conceptually, what is happening here? Conceptually, what is happening here? What are we doing? So there's a lot of bad music that came out of that world. There was also a lot of really great music that came out of that world that people didn't hear. Bands like Holy Soldier, bands like Fear Not, bands like, I'm reluctant to say Believer, the technical thrash band, which had crossover, not exactly mainstream, but secular world success and respect and admiration. I'm reluctant really to say that Believer was ever a Christian band. They wrote on Christian themes, and yeah, I suppose they were part of the Christian music world. They were certainly, at least initially, on a Christian label, but Believer, it was a bit of an outlier. A freaking fantastic band. Remains one of my favorite bands of all time, and legit. They had legit crossover, secular world attention, praise, success in that world. And their more recent music is not Christian themed at all, really. Anyways, not the point. There were some bands who came out of that Christian world who I think had the chops, had the look, had the songs to make it in the secular world. And some of them got a little bit of attention that way. There was also some really bad music that came out of that scene, especially lyrically. And I don't want to get into that right now, but there's some weird anomalies. And some of you who didn't grow up in that world would scratch your head and listen to that and go, what? Not the point. Point was, one of the bands that came out of that era, this band called Shout. And they were a straight up glam rock and roll band. All you had to do was see the photographs, late 80s, maybe 1990. Released a couple of records, It Won't Be Long, and In Your Face. And they were as glammy, purpley, spandexy, teased up, hairy as it was possible to get. Compelling records. And you may think you have nothing to do with Shout. You may think you have no connection whatsoever to Shout because you didn't grow up in that world. Truth is, you probably do, if you are a musician, have a connection to Shout, because the principal songwriter, lead guitar player, lead singer of that band was a cat called Ken Tamplin. And if you're a YouTube person, you will probably be familiar with the Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy and Ken Tamplin's online singing instruction and reaction videos. I have a somewhat strained relationship with online reaction videos. This became a thing, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. This sprung up. This such and such reacts to. And it's, again, more sensationalized, more clickbait stuff. It's be like these two dudes who react to whatever it is. Comedy routine, a lot of music reactions, whatever. And the thumbnail will be somebody who looks as though they've just seen a ghost. the most shocking thing in the history of the world has occurred. And what it is they listen to a Led Zeppelin. It's like, give me a break. It's so phony. It's so exaggerated. It's so over the top. It's so frigging fake overreactions to stuff. And they get viewed in the hundreds of thousands. But some people, some reaction channels are actually legit. And you think of the Charismatic Voice. That's a very, very popular one, where this opera singer, they call her our naive opera singer, at least pretends to hear a lot of rock songs for the first time. And she talks about the vocals. She reacts to the vocals, and she will talk about the technique that's involved in achieving some of this vocal stuff. And it'll be Skid Row and some of these big time Ronnie James Dio rock singers from the 80s. And it warms my cockles because I like to hear a younger person hear Sebastian Bach singing and be blown away, or Jeff Tate of Queensryche singing and be blown away, and, you know, add a certain legitimacy to some of that music that gets panned now. Tom Kiefer, Cinderella, some of that stuff that for whatever reason gets dismissed and has been ever since Nirvana first dropped upon us. All of a sudden, all of that music from the glam era of the 80s gets dismissed because they happen to wear hairspray and spandex, completely overlooking the enormous talent, musicianship, songwriting, guitar playing, singing that went into that music. Spectacular. Some of the best players that have ever played were that era, and it gets dismissed because of what they looked like for the most part. And it's like, we can't take that seriously because Nirvana. Well, those cats could play circles around almost everybody. And so it's fun for me now, 35 years later, to see younger people latching on to a Sebastian Bach vocal or a Jeff Tate vocal, something like that, and being blown away by just how mind-blowingly amazing these cats were. Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, it goes on and on and on and on. And Charismatic Voice is one of the good ones, right? And sometimes you wonder, like, you've really never heard this before, you know? And is the reaction a little bit overdone? But in her case, not so much. I think she does a really good job, and she's fun to listen to. And then she's wound up, like, she interviewed Justin Hawkins from The Darkness, or they did like a collab. She interviewed Sebastian Bach. Fun. And talking a lot about vocal technique, vocal physiology, the stuff that goes into producing those sounds. Very informative, interesting, entertaining, and she's fun to watch and listen to, and that's cool. But there are other reaction channels that are just like, come on. Very obviously overreacting to stuff for what? Views, clicks, whatever. And I find it inauthentic and annoying. One of the first people who was doing these kind of instructive reactions was Ken Tamplin of the Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy. And so he is a singing instructor, and in his 60s now, still belting like he did in the 80s on those Shout records. He is a prime example of somebody who has learned technique, learned endurance, kept his instrument in shape, and now instructs people on how to do that because, as I talked about on last week's episode, we got Vince Neil being bagged upon for not being able to sing, Axl, John Bon Jovi, almost everybody from that era. You hear them now. There are exceptions. Robin McCauley, Michael Sweet, Glenn Hughes can still somehow sing and sing well and with full power and with full range. And it's bloody amazing. But a lot of these cats cannot anymore, and they get bagged upon for it. And it's just aging. But Ken Tamplin is the proof that you can maintain, even enhance your voice as you get older with technique. And so the Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy is all about that. The proof is in the singing. And he was one of the first cats to be online doing these instructive reactions where it's like, okay, let's watch a live clip of singer X and let's talk about his posture. Let's talk about his breathing, his breath support. Let's talk about how he's running out of gas here, running out of breath, talking about the technique and the physicality of singing in a really instructive and practical way. And so the Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy channel blew up as one of the first ones, and a lot of really helpful and useful information. And he did really great, continues to do really great on YouTube. And so if you've never heard Shout before, his Christian metal band from the 80s, you still know Ken Tamplin, and you've probably watched some of his videos. And one of my great claims to fame is that I have been followed on Instagram by the Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy. Oh yeah, kids, that's one of the ways you know you've arrived, when Ken Tamplin follows you on the Instagram. How about that? Wearing that like a badge of honor. Anyways, you didn't know Ken Tamplin from the band Shout, but you knew him perhaps from his YouTube presence. And so he popped up. Shout hasn't been around for years, decades. He popped up and he's like, hey, we're going to drop a new Shout single. Wow, that's interesting. And so one of the songs I'm talking about this week is this new single by Shout called Kingdom Come. And what do I think? I don't do reaction videos. It's not my bag. It's not my style, and I don't like to be judgmental. And I'm not going to be. This is not a glam metal song, first of all. If anything, it's got kind of a 70s overtone, 70s, and a little bit of a grunge thing, actually. I think it's drop-tuned. And it's very interesting to me because Ken Tamplin on his channel doesn't talk much about his own musical history, to be honest. And he certainly doesn't talk a lot about his evangelical history. You wouldn't know, I don't think, from watching his reaction videos or his music instruction videos, you wouldn't know necessarily that he was a Christian artist in a Christian band, part of that world. But then Shout reappears, and it's, as far as I can tell, the 4 original members of that band popping up to record a new track together called Kingdom Come. And it is as Christian as it's possible to get. Wearing that on his sleeve. And the lyrics are derived from those New Testament passages about love. They say love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy. That blows my mind. It does not boast and it is not proud. It honors others and screams it loud. And I know it keeps no records of wrong, always hopes, always trusts. It preserves and protects. It never fails. It's insane. Love's the only thing that remains. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. On earth as in heaven, thy kingdom come. If I could move all the earth, but I do not have love, I give all to the poor just to boast up above. If I have all the knowledge this world can give, can tell the future, without love I have not lived. All the things of this earth will pass away. Faith, hope, and love are the 3 things that remain, but the greatest of these is love. Thy kingdom come. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts again. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil sin. That, of course, is the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And I wonder who will stop the rain. No, that's me. I wonder what people think who are not familiar with Ken Tamplin's actual religious past perspective. Some of the people who follow his channel where this has been posted, I've seen some comments, and they're all, I think, from people from back in the day, and they're all like, praise Jesus for another Christian rock song. Okay. I haven't seen any reactions really from just vocal followers of his channel, whether they're put off by that or not. In a certain sense, I'm like, hey, good for you, Ken Tamplin. Pin your colors to the mast, wear them. That's okay. That's cool by me. And I don't think the message is wrong. The greatest of these is love. I don't really have a problem with that, especially in this day and age when hate and aggression and violence and otherism and separation, all of that stuff is so prominent, so prevalent, and causing so much damage in the friggin' world. For somebody to come out and released the song that says fundamentally all you need is love. It's good enough for the Beatles. It's good enough for me. So I don't have a problem with the message. I think we could all use a little more love, could we not? I think it's a pretty cool song, and it's got a really groovy chorus, and it's kind of cool because, again, it's not an 80s glam song whatsoever. If you go back and listen to In Your Face, It Won't Be Long, those records that they released in the late 80s, straight up glam rock, man. And Ken Tamplin is a ripping lead guitar player. A lot of people don't know that either. Like, this dude, Ken Tamplin, is a seriously talented man. Fantastic singer, has kept that amazing range, and he shows it off on the song. And he's a killer lead guitar player, too. Like, this dude is a rock star. And, you know, if he had chosen maybe to go a different way back in the late 80s, might have become more of a rock star than he did. He's a household name amongst evangelical households. That's a small percentage. And he had the game, I think. He had the chops to make it in the mainstream world as well. Chose not to go that route, and you can respect that too. I do. This is not that. This is distinctly a 70s sounding tune. And then when it kicks into this breakdown section or this bridge after the second chorus, it's 60s. It's like something the Monkees might have done. Very different, you know. But then this chorus is really groovy. I think it's got some cool guitar work in it, kind of a Queen vibe on the guitar solo, like layered guitar harmonies, and pretty cool, pretty neat song. Lyrics will put some people off. I don't think Ken Tamplin cares too much about that, but I think it's neat. So if you're looking for something inspirational, that's what they call Christian music now, inspirational music. And if you're looking at the world and it's dire and it's dour and it's negative and you're feeling not so great about it, want a little musical pick-me-up, I suggest checking out this song, Kingdom Come, by ostensibly Shout. And I think they're calling it Shout, but I'm only really finding it on Ken Tamplin's channels, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Interesting song. And if you've never checked out the Christian rock before, maybe that's your starting point. Go back and listen a little bit to the In Your Face record. And that it was Shout was very pop metal, very upbeat, very positive, good rock and roll, and some really nice guitar work on those records. And Ken Tamplin's a hell of a player. Hell of a singer, hell of a player, and that's a kind of an interesting nugget to have dropped. For those of us from back in the day, even if we don't run in those circles anymore. And if you want to know more about the Christian metal scene of the late 80s, early 90s, let me know and I'll tell you more about it, because it was a weird, weird time to be a teenager, man. But if you're looking for something that does not necessarily harken back to pop metal in the evangelical Christian world of the 1980s, very niche market that. I encountered something really, really cool this week, which will be, I suppose, the song of the week. It's a tune called Black Honey, and the artist is DYYA, all capital letters, DYYA. I don't know what that stands for. The information about this artist is somewhat elusive, but not entirely. It's a girl called Diana Lee, or Diana Leah, Leah, and she is the singer in a band called Delain, Delain, and they are a symphonic metal band. Think of Evanescence, something like that. And she's begun to put out solo stuff, I guess you would call it, under this name DYYA. And so the third single she's dropped, which ran across my YouTubes this week, is a tune called Black Honey. And I just really dig it. I really dig it. And it's interesting to me because when I heard this song, the first thing I thought was Sleep Token. So if you have been listening at all to Sleep Token, if you've checked out Sleep Token, which became a phenomenon in the past year or two, amongst a certain subset, Sleep Token doesn't really have songs on the radio that I'm aware of, and yet they've begun to play arenas. When I went to the Ghost show in Berlin last year, I noticed in the crowd, in the lineup outside, a whole lot of Ghost shirts and a whole lot of Sleep Token shirts. And so Sleep Token is another one of these anonymous bands with a kind of mythological storyline around it. Not nearly as campy and silly as Ghost, more serious. Sleep Token is that anonymous band and very divisive. Some people frigging love Sleep Token. Other people are like, I don't get this at all because they're called a metal band. But for the most part, it seems like soul and hip hop music. And then once in a while, they go into this just wild metal riff. It is what they call genre bending. And the first thing I thought when I heard this song Black Honey by DYYA was Sleep Token. It starts off with these synths, very slow, dark, moody synths. The video is like black and white. It's all very moody and slow, right? Verse kicks in. There's like some heavy synths. There's guitar happening. Very dark song. And Diana singing over top of it. Clean vocals, really, really great voice. Reminds of Amy Lee of Evanescence. And it's like, this is cool. This is dark. It's weird. It's kind of heavy. It's kind of pop. Very much like Sleep Token. And then it goes into this chorus, nice harmonies, this guitar kicks in. And then in the second verse, there had been bass drums, etc. And this is where it really kind of gets Sleep Token-y too, because it drops into this kind of trap beat. Trap beats it's an electronic music thing. Trap beat is usually very simple, electronically produced sounds, intricate kind of hi-hat stuff happening, clicks and sounds. That's trap. And it drops into a trap beat. She's singing over that, another chorus, and then this guitar drop happens after the second chorus, which is Sleep Token. If Vessel from Sleep Token was singing over top of this, it would be Sleep Token. So if you like that, not everybody likes Sleep Token. Some people frigging love Sleep Token. I'm in the middle somewhere. Really like a lot of it. I don't listen to it much, but when I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, I get why people dig this because it's soul, R&B, trap, and then metal. And the problem that people have with Sleep Token is that they keep being called metal. And so metal purists are like, this is not metal. This is soul. This is trap. This is hip hop. But they keep getting branded as a metal band. And the stage show and the look and all of that is very metal. But I get it. The music a lot of the time is like, this is radio pop. This is R&B. This tune by DYYA doesn't really go that far, but it is dark pop, synth, and then this kind of heavy guitar breakdown. It goes into halftime. Really heavy. And this is one of the things that Sleep Token does really, really well is they'll drop into this drop-tuned, industrial sounding halftime chugging thing. And that's where the metal part comes through. And you can just see, if you watch live footage, you can just see the crowd surge into this headbanging, whatever. And then it'll just pop into this R&B stuff. It's really, really strange. This song by DYYA doesn't quite go that far in terms of bending genres, but it does. And she has a really cool voice. She sings very clean, catchy chorus, a lot of melodies, and then just these interesting things happening underneath it. It's a moody pop, rock, metal, symphonic song. And I just really like it. And if you're at all interested in kind of modern sounding genre bending music, if you're at all interested in Sleep Token, then you might dig this, and I think it's worth checking out. I will certainly put it and the new Shout song, Kingdom Come, on the Reference on the Podcast 2026 playlist. That's the Semi-Eloquent podcast on Spotify, Reference on the Pod 2026 playlist, and you can check them out. You can let me know what you think. And check out some Shout if you can find it out there in the world from back in the day. A lot of big guitar stuff, man. If you're into guitar shredding, Shout was really big on that. Part of their sound, and that's cool. And I don't have a great life lesson for you this week. I feel bad about that, but it is what it is. I don't always have a life lesson. I just want to give you some new music, give you 45 minutes of distraction from what's going on in the world. It is not an abdication of responsibility to check out from the bad news for 45 minutes. You can check back in later. It's not going anywhere, unfortunately. Maybe a distraction is just useful for you. And so there it is. There you have it. If nothing else, go back and listen to the 20 seconds or so of birdsong. Just feel the way in which you decompress from that. I want to thank you for listening. I hope this episode wasn't a great disappointment to you. Doing my best over here with back spasms yet again. Good things do happen when you put yourself out there. You know, one of the things I want just to constantly remind people of my era, people of my age, is that we're still young, man. Life is not over. There is a temptation, especially when you gather with a bunch of 50-somethings, to feel as though you're on the downward slope, to feel as though you're closing up shop. Even if you're getting ready to retire, and some of my friends are, that is not the end of your frigging life. It's the end of a chapter. A whole new chapter awaits. And the opportunity is there for you right now. If you want to change some element of your life, your career, your occupation, whatever it is, it's not working for you. I don't want you to become complacent. I don't want you to think it's over. I don't want you to think it's too late for anything. All right? Maybe it's too late to make the World Cup squad. Okay. But I know there's a temptation amongst people of my age to feel as though it's too late for stuff, and it's just not. And whatever it is that's in you, whatever it is that you have wanted to do, have wanted to try, have neglected to do so far, you still can. And there is so much energy, and there is so much optimism, and there is so much reason to get out of bed that exists in those dreams that you have not yet pursued. I want you to know it's not too frigging late, okay? I didn't start really taking music seriously until I was 40. It is not too late. So all of you 50-somethings out there who are disgruntled, who are feeling as though you missed the boat, you didn't. There's always another boat coming along, and I want you to jump on the next one, okay? Because it's not too late yet. At some point it will be, though. And so I want you to gear up. I want you to engage your enthusiasm. I want you to look at that unrequited dream, that life not yet lived, and I want you to know that you still can. And I want you to pursue it. And I want you to get out of bed in the morning and listen to the birds and then go bravely off in the direction of your dreams, okay, kids? And along the way, listen to some good music. Thank you ever so much for listening. Good things do happen when you put yourself out there. I will be back next week with something. Until then, please do take very good care.